Since ancient times, people have wondered how death feels. Humanity has never stopped thinking about what happens after death. Some believe death means the end of everything, while others believe death is not the end. The body may perish, but the soul still exists. Those who believe in the immortality of the soul even provide evidence, claiming that near-death experiences are proof of the soul's existence. Dau, a construction worker, once had an accident. When something fell on him, his heart stopped beating. Fortunately, after emergency treatment, he was revived. According to Dau's account, after losing consciousness he saw himself being resuscitated, observing everything from a third-person perspective, as if his soul had left his body. He even saw a dazzling beam of light. This was the most miraculous part. According to Dr. Raymond Moody, a physician who specializes in near-death studies, he discovered that many near-death cases mention seeing mysterious lights. These people came from different professions, ages, and beliefs. Some had no religious faith at all, yet they all described seeing this mysterious light. At the time, I kept wondering, what exactly is that light? Is it God? But some who had near-death experiences didn't believe in God at all, yet they still saw it. Recently, I came across an ancient book written over 1,200 years ago, the Tibetan Book of the Dead, also called Bardo the Doll. It is said to have been written by Guru Padma Sambhava, the great master who introduced Buddhism to Tibet from India. The book was written not only for the living to study Dharma, but also as a guide for the dead. It describes in detail what one experiences in the 49 days after death. It turns out death is not the end, and this book records the truest image of the afterlife. Today, let us unveil the mystery of death and see what happens in the 49 days after we die. According to the Tibetan Book of the Dead, when a person is close to death, their consciousness still exists. They can still see and hear. In fact, in Buddhism, even if the heart stops beating, consciousness continues, and can last up to 49 days after cremation. We know this thanks to an ancient prophecy. In Tibet, sacred places often hide treasures of Dharma. For hundreds or even thousands of years, they wait silently until the right time comes, and someone who is destined will uncover them. These are called terma, hidden treasures. In 1347, during the world's deadliest plague, which killed between 75 to 200 million people across Eurasia, a prophecy came true. In 1342, a 15-year-old Tibetan named Karma Lingpa received a spiritual vision and discovered many important scriptures hidden 500 years earlier in a cave at Mount Gampadar. Among them was the Bardo the Doll. This discovery shocked Tibetan masters, for its author was none other than Guru Padma Sambhava, often called the second Buddha. In fact, Tibetan Buddhism owes its existence to him. It is said that the Buddha himself prophesied that 1112 years after his nirvana, a man named Padma Sambhava would appear. Indeed, after the Buddha's passing, Guru Padma Sambhava was born. It is said he was born from a lotus flower, adopted by an Indian king, and though he could have lived in wealth and luxury, he renounced it all, just like Shakyamuni, and dedicated his life to spreading Dharma. He brought Buddhism into Tibet and wrote the Bardo the Doll, which reveals the afterlife in detail. However, because Tibet was isolated, the book remained little known until 1927, when a foreigner named Walter Evans Wentz, with the help of Tibetan lamas, translated it into English under the title The Tibetan Book of the Dead. Published in Europe, it caused a sensation, and later reached China. Even Kang Youwei, after reading it, was shocked. Before then, he believed death was the end of everything. But this book confirmed otherwise, presenting a complete vision of the afterlife. It explains that after death, consciousness exists in an intermediate space we cannot see. A bardo. In Buddhism, after death, we do not go immediately to heaven or hell, but instead remain in this mysterious state. Bardo means in between in Tibetan. For example, the space between day and night, or between two houses, is a bardo. Even the transition zone between parallel universes can be called a bardo. In Buddhist thought, human life goes through 6 bardos: the bardo of dreams, the bardo of meditation, the bardo of dying, the bardo of dharma, the bardo of rebirth, and the bardo of becoming. 3 bardos occur while alive, and 3 after death. Personally, I believe that in the bardo, consciousness exists between clarity and confusion. People may experience out-of-body journeys, visions, or even prophetic dreams. According to the Tibetan Book of the Dead, within 49 days after death, the deceased will undergo many trials. These are like illusory images, created by the mind itself. The soul is influenced by past karma, and what it sees depends on its deeds in life. Some souls will see terrifying scenes, fire, floods, or monsters. In fact, these visions do not exist in reality. They are just projections of one's inner fear and karma. If the soul recognizes this, it will not be harmed. But if it cannot recognize them, the soul will suffer in fear and be dragged into lower realms. At the same time, luminous Buddhas and Bodhisattvas will appear, emitting dazzling light, guiding the soul toward liberation. However, most souls cannot withstand this brilliance. They fear the light, and instead they run toward dim, weak lights that seem gentler, but which actually lead them into the cycle of rebirth. The Bardo Dal teaches that if one can accept and merge with the bright light, one will attain liberation and be free from samsara. But if one cannot, one will follow the weaker light and be reborn, depending on karma. Therefore, the book was often read aloud beside the deceased, guiding their consciousness during the 49 days. It reminded them not to fear the bright light, because that light is their own true nature, the Buddha within. At the same time, family members of the deceased also perform good deeds, chant sutras, and dedicate merit. This helps the departed soul gain strength, reduce fear, and find a better rebirth. Modern science has also recorded many near-death experiences, which strangely resemble the descriptions in the Bardo Dal. Some people report leaving their body, meeting beings of light, or reviewing their whole life like a film. This shows that ancient wisdom and modern accounts are not entirely different. The journey of the soul after death may truly exist as described in this sacred text. So, what really happens in these 49 days after death? According to the Tibetan Book of the Dead, the process can be divided into several stages. The first stage occurs right after the heart stops. At that moment, consciousness leaves the body. Some people can see their own body lying there, and even hear the cries of relatives, but cannot speak or touch them. This is the beginning of the bardo of dying. Next, consciousness encounters dazzling lights. This is the bardo of Dharma, when Buddhas and Bodhisattvas appear. If the soul can recognize them and merge into the light, liberation is attained. But if the soul cannot accept this light, it enters the next stage, the bardo of becoming. Here, consciousness wanders, sometimes confused, sometimes clear. It may see frightening images, or beautiful scenes, depending on past karma. These experiences last up to 49 days. At the end, consciousness is drawn by karma to enter a new womb, beginning the cycle of rebirth once again. Which realm one is reborn into, human, animal, or others, depends entirely on past deeds. This is why Tibetan Buddhists pay great attention to the 49 days after death. During this time, family members do good deeds, chant sutras, and dedicate merit to help the deceased find peace and a good rebirth. From this teaching, we can see that life and death are connected. Death is not the end, but a transition, like crossing a bridge. Whether the next life is better or worse depends on one's actions in this life. Therefore, the Buddha always taught us to live mindfully, cultivate virtue, and practice compassion. When the moment of death comes, the mind will be peaceful, unafraid of the light, and able to follow it to liberation. Some may ask, if the afterlife truly exists as described in the Tibetan Book of the Dead, why can't we see it while alive? In fact, it is because our eyes are limited to the material world. The realm of consciousness belongs to a different dimension. Only when one is near death, or through deep meditation, can people touch this mysterious state. That is why many great monks, during meditation, can clearly describe the process of death and rebirth. In Tibetan Buddhism, there are even practices that train people to face death. For example, Phowa practice teaches how to transfer consciousness at the moment of death, directly guiding it toward liberation. Ordinary people, however, often live in fear and ignorance. When death arrives suddenly, they panic, cling to their body, and refuse to let go. This is what causes the soul to wander in confusion in the bardo. The bardo, the doll, was created to help beings at this crucial moment. Just by listening to its words, the deceased can awaken, understand the illusions, and find the path toward the light of liberation. This shows the compassion of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. Even after death, they do not abandon sentient beings, but continue to guide them until they are free from the endless cycle of suffering. So, the mystery of death is not something to be feared. Instead, it is a chance to realize our true nature, to return to the light, and to transcend all illusions. The 49 days are like a great journey of the soul. If one lives mindfully and cultivates good karma, that journey will be bright and peaceful. But if one lives in greed, anger, and ignorance, that journey will be dark and painful. Everything depends on the seeds we plant in life. 1615. In fact, modern psychology also confirms a similar view. Many scientists studying near-death experiences have collected countless testimonies. Most describe leaving the body, traveling through a tunnel, and seeing a bright light. Some even say they met deceased relatives, or beings of compassion, who encouraged them not to fear. These experiences resonate closely with the descriptions in the Tibetan Book of the Dead. Therefore, perhaps ancient wisdom and modern research are pointing to the same truth: death is not the end, but only a transformation. Consciousness continues, carrying karma into the next stage. If we understand this, we will no longer cling to wealth, fame, or possessions. When death comes, none of these can be taken along. Only virtue, compassion, and wisdom accompany us on the journey. Thus, the 49 days after death are extremely important. They are not only the final chance for the deceased to awaken, but also a reminder for the living to reflect deeply on how they live each day. If we plant good seeds now, when the time of death arrives, we will face it calmly, without fear, and smoothly enter the light of liberation. If not, we will be trapped in the cycle of endless rebirth. The Buddha once taught that life is impermanent, like dew on grass or lightning in the sky. Knowing this, we should not waste time in hatred or ignorance, but should use every moment to cultivate the path. In this way, when the journey of the 49 days begins, we will not be confused or afraid. Instead, we will walk with clarity, following the guiding light, until we reach the other shore of peace. Therefore, the Tibetan Book of the Dead is not only a guide for the deceased, but also a profound teaching for the living. It reminds us that every thought, word, and action leaves a trace that will follow us beyond death. If we live with kindness, forgiveness, and generosity, the journey through the 49 days will be filled with light and guidance. But if we live with hatred and selfishness, the path will be dark and frightening. This book also teaches us not to cling, even to the Dharma itself. Just as the Buddha compared his teachings to a raft, once we cross the river of suffering, we must leave the raft behind and move forward freely. Similarly, during the bardo journey, if we cling to illusions, we suffer. But if we let go, recognize the light as our true self, then liberation is possible. This is the ultimate wisdom of Buddhism. For this reason, many Tibetan families read the bardo the dal beside the deceased every day for 49 days. They believe that even a single moment of awakening can change the entire journey of the soul. In truth, this is also a lesson for us while still alive, to awaken in each present moment. If we can live every day with awareness, compassion, and clarity, then the moment of death will not bring fear, but peace. So, the mystery of death is not truly mysterious. The answer has always been within us. Life and death are just two sides of the same reality, and both are opportunities for awakening. When we understand this, we no longer see death as the end, but as a continuation, like opening a new door. Beyond that door lies another journey, and the light of liberation is always waiting for us. The Tibetan Book of the Dead tells us that during the 49 days, every moment is an opportunity. If the soul can awaken at any stage, it can transcend the cycle of rebirth and enter liberation. This shows the boundless compassion of the Buddhas, who always give beings a chance to return, even after death. No one is abandoned, the door of liberation is always open. For us, while still alive, the best preparation is to practice now. When we meditate, chant, or cultivate compassion, we are training ourselves for that inevitable moment of transition. When death comes, if the mind is calm and clear, we will not be afraid. We will recognize the light, embrace it, and walk into it with confidence. That is the true meaning of conquering death. Therefore, life and death are not opposites. They are one continuous journey. Living well is preparing for death. Dying well is opening the way for a brighter rebirth, or even liberation. So, the greatest lesson from the Tibetan Book of the Dead is this: do not fear death. Instead, understand it, prepare for it, and live in such a way that when it comes, we can smile and step into the light. If we live with awareness, kindness, and wisdom, then when the 49 days arrive, the path ahead will not be dark. It will be filled with guidance, peace, and the radiance of liberation. Thus, the mystery of death is no longer frightening. With the guidance of the Dharma, we understand that death is simply a doorway, a transition to another existence. The Tibetan Book of the Dead offers us a map, showing the soul's journey through illusions, lights, and karmic trials during the 49 days, until it reaches its next destination. Whether that destination is liberation or rebirth depends entirely on how we live now. Every action, every thought, is like planting a seed that will bear fruit when death arrives. So, let us live each day with mindfulness, kindness, and clarity. In this way, when the time comes, we will not cling or be afraid, but will walk calmly into the light. This is the deepest teaching of Buddhism: life and death are not separate, but are both part of the great cycle of existence. If we awaken, both life and death become liberation. Therefore, cherish this life, cultivate good deeds, and prepare for the journey beyond. When the 49 days come, the light of wisdom will guide us, and we will find true peace. In the end, death is not the end at all. It is only the beginning of another journey, and within it lies the eternal opportunity to awaken to our true nature, the Buddha within.